Hi guys, James at Rampant Lion Reviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one we are going to do another beer from the small partiers released recently through Stigbergets. If I remember correctly, the date for this one was the 22nd of March 2019, and this is a brewery combination that you actually saw me review just a couple of videos back. They did two beers together on this collaboration trip. So for the Swedish side of things, we are going to return to Gothenburg, Göteborg you should say in Swedish, and have another beer from Stigbergets Bryggeri. And this is another collaboration that they did with Collective Arts Brewing from Hamilton in Ontario over in Canada. The other one, of course, you saw me review was the Dunder IPA, which was really nice. This one is the Brak. So this guy is a 5% Berliner Weisse with blueberries and raspberries added to the brew. So it should be very nice. I know that both of these breweries tended to focus more on IPAs and pale ales and things like that, but they both are starting to venture forward into sour ales and stuff. So this one should be a very, very interesting beer. I've not reviewed a Berliner Weisse for you on the channel for a little while actually, so I thought it was about time that we fixed that. So very much looking forward to this one. It's two breweries that I know fairly well, and as always I hope you guys enjoy my take on this one. I think this one should be a really quite interesting beer. The Berliner Weisse seems to be a really popular style when it comes to sour beers recently, so here's hoping this is another good one. So anyway, as is usual with my reviews then, I'll tell you a little bit about the breweries involved here. If you want to get straight to the tasting, just fast forward. All the usual links are in the description below. That's the brewery website, it's a link to my other reviews that I've done, both from Stigbergets Bryggeri and from Collective Arts Brewing as well. No doubt there will be more from both in the near future. There's all the usual social media. If you want to see more beer reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The whole channel, of course, has a geography-based tagging system, so you can go into the homepage and search for beer based on country, city, state, county, prefecture, whatever it is you're interested in. Do check out the playlists of beers from different countries. There is one there for all the Swedish beers that I've reviewed for you, and another list for all the Canadian ones. The Swedish one gets added to pretty constantly, the Canadian one gets added to whenever I get the opportunity, and as always, please do get in touch and let me know some of the other beers and breweries that you guys would like to see me review. It's always great to hear from you guys that are watching the videos, and the support that you show the channel is hugely appreciated. So anyway, to tell you a little bit about Stigbergets Bryggeri first off then. So Stigbergets Bryggeri, as I've told you before, are based in Gothenburg, and they were founded by Nils Hultkrantz and Richard Simonsson, and the pair together own two bars that share the same kitchen. So this is the Bar Chino and the Hagebjörns Cafe, which can be found on Linnégatan in Gothenburg, and both of these opened back in 2007. So originally the idea was that they wanted to brew a few beers that they could sell in the bars, and this led to them kegging the beer and selling it to other pubs before eventually they started bottling the beers in November of 2014. The original beers that they were doing were mainly English and German styles, but more recently, of course, they began expanding into the more hoppy American beer styles, and the IPAs, the New England IPAs in particular, was where they really made their name. So the original head brewer was Ole Anderson, who is the co-owner of OO Brewing. He's now focusing on that venture, and he was replaced towards a couple of years ago now actually, I think it's about 2 years ago, by Barnaby Struve, who was vice president at Three Floyds, but he has again moved on. But very recently they've opened up a new brewery at Partihalarna, where they're brewing 5,000 litres per batch, and they're also beginning to work on some sour beers at the moment as well. They started canning their beers in 440ml cans, as well as these kind of small slimline energy drink type cans as well. So this means that they're going to be able to export a lot more of their beer as well. So those of you watching outside of Sweden should find it a little bit more easy to get a hold of some of these Stigbergets beers. But they now have a brew team of Ollie Banks, who used to work for Beavertown in London, and they've also got Lucas Munroyd in there, who worked for All In Brewing, who are one of the various little breweries around Gothenburg. Those guys are a kind of contract gypsy brewer type brewery, but they do some pretty damn awesome beers as well. So yeah, you know, a very good brewery, Stigbergets, in terms of their IPAs and things like that. They do tend to stick to the IPAs and I'm guessing the sour beers, the Berliner Weisses and things like that. Now, they don't brew too many things in the way of like imperial stouts and stuff like that, so that's something that I really would like to see from them in the future. They did brew one Scotch ale, which I thought turned out very, very nicely. But yeah, an interesting brewery, this one, and one of the better known Swedish craft breweries these days. But as I said, Gothenburg is a very, very good beer city these days, and it's one that you definitely need to go and visit it at some point fairly soon. So yeah, so that's all you need to know about Stigbergets just now. As always, if you want to learn a little bit more, you can check out the brewery website in the description below, and you can follow them on Facebook and Untappd and things like that, and that will keep you up to date with all the latest goings on there. So on to the Canadian side of the brewery then, to Collective Arts. So as I mentioned earlier, Collective Arts Brewing are based in Hamilton in Ontario, and they were founded back in 2013 by Matt Johnson and Bob Russell. So Matt comes from a marketing background, and he'd worked in the beer industry for a number of years, having worked with Moosehead, who are one of the big kind of macro lager producers over in Canada. But Bob came from a branding background and ran his own business before getting into the brewery. But the brewery are based in the former brewery of Lakeport Brewing Company, which is leased from the Hamilton Port Authority, and they share this facility with Nickelbrook Brewing, and it's known as the Arts and Science Brewery. But the current brewmaster at the brewery is Ryan Morrow, and he's also the brewmaster for Nickelbrook Brewing, for whom he's worked since 2006. But the whole idea behind this brewery, and indeed its name, is that they apparently want to bring together local artists, musicians, filmmakers, photographers, and things like this, just all together and create a collective through the sociability aspect, if you like, of craft beer, which I think is a very nice idea. So if you go to the brewery, they've always got artwork on sale from different artists and things like that. They've got a lot of live music shows and things like that, and it just seems, you know, generally a kind of cool place to hang out actually. So hopefully I can get out to Canada and visit it at some point. That's one of my goals over the next few years, is to get out to Canada and see a few things and try a few of the different craft beers, of course, as well. And Collective Arts would be one of the ones that I'd be very curious to visit. But yeah, one of the Canadian breweries that really are starting to get their name out there now. Canadian beer, as I've told you before, is, you know, bloody difficult to get because, you know, they're right next to America and there's so many beers being exported from there. I think the laws in Canada are considerably more strict as well, even between the different provinces. That's one of the difficult things with America, all the different state laws and stuff like that you've got. So yeah, I do hope that we start to see more and more Canadian beer coming out of Canada over to Europe and things, and Collective Arts seem to be one of the breweries that are spearheading that at the moment, so long may it continue. And if you get the chance to try some of the beers, I would recommend Radio the Mothership if you're watching in Sweden. That's a really nice double IPA, and you get a lot of bang for your buck with it in Sweden as well. I think you pay about 30 Swedish crowns and you get a really nice 8-9% double IPA out of that, and I would recommend that beer. Just be aware of it, because all their cans, they have the same beer but some of them have different artwork, so, you know, just watch that you actually buy the right beer from them. But yeah, another very nice brewery, and if you want to learn a little bit more, you can check out the brewery website in the description below, and of course you can follow them on Facebook and Instagram and stuff like that, and that will keep you up to date with all the latest goings on there. But yeah, let's get on to the actual tasting of this beer itself then. We can get rid of the brewery notes. As I mentioned at the start of the video, this one is a 5% Berliner Weisse. They've added blueberries and raspberries to this one, and it's also got some Pilsner malt in the malt base in addition to the kind of standard wheat as well. So yeah, really should be a really quite interesting beer, this one. And if I remember correctly, this is the first sour beer that I've had from Stigbergets as well. One thing I'd love to see Stigbergets try actually would be a Brut IPA and also a Black IPA. I think that would be a really interesting project for them. But I'll just let you have a little look at the artwork on this one before we open up. I'm guessing this art is has come from Collective Arts rather than from Stigbergets. It's quite different in style to what you would normally get from Stigbergets, and it's a little bit kind of freaky actually. It's almost like one of these bad juju things from African tribal art or something. I have no idea what to make of that. Some of the artwork you get on these beers is rather creative, you have to say. There you can see the two brewery symbols there, Collective Arts and Stigbergets Bryggeri, and this one is a 5% Berliner Weisse, like I said. So yeah, it says the art on this one is Mikael Tartness, so I'm guessing that's more of a Swedish name actually than a Collective Arts one. So maybe I've told you lies about this beer, maybe as a Swedish artist rather than a Canadian artist. So yeah, but let's get this guy out and we will get on with the tasting then. So geez, look at that. That's the pinkest head I have ever seen. That, look at the colour of that beer, that's ridiculous. That is absolutely ridiculous. Yeah, so for a blueberry sour beer, it's actually come out as being more raspberry in colour. So that's kind of interesting. But yeah, you can see the colour of that head there. That's, you know, the colour of that head is absolutely ridiculous. But it's a, yeah, two-finger frothy blood pink head, I don't know. Yeah, basically a big massive pink head. There are one or two bumps in it, but mainly quite a frothy head. That's just going to settle down and give you a nice sort of thin foamy layer, I would think. In terms of the colour of this beer, it's actually, it looks a lot darker when you hold it up to the light. This one's a sort of, it's almost like a cherry wood kind of colour. I always think beers, you know, if you use the different wood shades and things like that, it's almost like a mahogany stained cherry wood, but it's got a little bit more of a... It's the same. It's almost the same colour as Gibson SG guitars. You know, that heritage cherry colour that you get, or wine red or whatever. That's probably a fair descriptor of this one actually. It's quite a brightly coloured red wine actually. So there's one or two big bubbles sticking towards the side of the glass, and you can see that there is quite a little bit of carbonation activity in this one. Quite a few small bubbles just heading up towards the bottom of that head there, but you know, overall it does look pretty nice actually, and not out of the realms of possibility when you consider that this is a Berliner Weisse. So let's take a closer look at the aroma and just see how we get on with this beer then. But you know, the Berliner Weisses are usually very straight up in their aromas. You can smell how fresh the strawberries are in this. It's if you go and pick strawberries out in the field, it has that almost earthy kind of quality that you get if you just pick the raspberries straight off the vine. You can pick... I'm very sensitive to raspberries, of course, as well, because it's almost like one of our national fruits in Scotland. Our raspberries and strawberries are very well regarded actually. But the raspberries come out of this one straight away. It's got that tart, sharp raspberry quality to it. You've got a little bit of the... you can pick up some of the juicier blueberries underneath it as well. The fruits are very straightforward, to be honest. It's raspberries and blueberries, which is what you'd expect when it's a raspberry and blueberry Berliner Weisse. But I'm finding that there is almost a touch of an earthy, kind of vegetal, herbal sort of thing to this beer, which is kind of interesting. You don't get that in the aroma of every Berliner Weisse, right enough. So that's an interesting aspect to this one. Of course, you can pick up those sharp, tart qualities that you would expect from the fruits as well, particularly the raspberry. And the raspberries, as your nose adjusts to this one, I think the raspberries are getting a little bit more kind of... they do get a little bit more juicy, I would say, as your nose adjusts to the beer. But yeah, nice sharp tartness in there. And also, you know, nice little bit of sharp tartness in there. And I would say it does get a little bit more juicy as your nose adjusts to it. There's a little bit of a grassy element from the green side of the hops in there. You can pick up a little touch of the earthiness from the noble hops in there as well. We'd be guessing they're using German hops in this beer, since it is a German beer style. And just some of the aromas, after you've had a good few German traditional beers, which of course is where my whole love of beer started, you can really detect in beers when there's noble hops in there. So I think there will be something along the lines of Hallertau or Tettnanger hops in there. So yeah, just a nice, quite subtle floral grassy quality to the beer as well, which I really like. So yeah, I like how everything is going together in this one. So yeah, in terms of the malt base then, you can pick up, there's the nice kind of smooth wheat, white bready sort of thing in there. Yeah, I like that nice smooth white, that wheaty quality. This one you can pick up, there's a little touch of the Pilsner malt in there. There's maybe a little slight biscuity note to this one as well. But to me, this one is pretty much everything you would expect of a Berliner Weisse. It's got the smooth white bready wheat, it's got a little bit of the sharp and tart juicy fruits, and it's also got a little bit of that noble hop quality that you would want as well. So without further ado then, let's have a taste of this one. I'm very curious to see how this turns out, because we've got two good breweries involved here. This one is the Brak, a Berliner Weisse with raspberries and blueberries added to it, from Stigbergets Bryggeri in Gothenburg here in Sweden, and Collective Arts Brewery from Hamilton over in Ontario in Canada. Let's get stuck into this one. Sláinte, skål. Now, first impression of this beer, very, very light and very smooth. Some of these sour beers can be a little bit puckering when you take them in. This one comes across as juicy right from the very start. This isn't one of the more sour beers that you're going to come across. To me, this is a little bit more of a juicy, kind of easier drinking sour beer. Yeah. So, I mean, it has everything you would kind of expect from it. The raspberries in this one aren't quite tart. They're more juicy, I would say. You do get a little bit of tartness from them, but I would say that this beer does lean a little bit more towards the blueberries rather than the raspberries, which I'm surprised about when you consider the colour of it. You know, that's quite interesting, because you would think with the colour of this beer it would be a little bit more raspberry than blueberry, right enough. It's almost a cherry red colour. That's actually another descriptor you could use for the appearance of this one. But yeah, it's a very it's more of a juicy Berliner Weiss, this one. Let's just try and break the flavour down a little bit then. In the middle of your palate you can feel that nice white bready, wheaty quality, that just blankets the middle of your tongue. You can feel that there's a degree of crispness to this beer as well. You've got a little touch of the Pilsner malt in the middle of your palate, and there's almost, in the very centre of your tongue, you've got a little touch of the a biscuity sweetness as well. I mean, the malt base is quite simple. This beer isn't really doing anything surprising in terms of the Berliner Weiss style, but it really is just, you know, going for the sort of juicier and smoother end of the spectrum. So yeah. Yeah, I do like how everything is going together in this one. The malt base is really quite smooth, and I like the way that the wheaty side of the beer almost just sweetens up a little bit the further you go into the flavour. To me, this one almost has a little touch of vanilla. If you go to the very centre of your palate and then come forward, there is almost just a little touch of vanilla to this one. The further you go into the aftertaste with this beer. On the hoppy side of things then, back corners of the palate, you've got a little bit of that nice almost sweet earthiness that you would expect of the noble hops. As you come further forward, that just smooths out. You get a little touch of floral aromaticity on the front corners of the palate, then round the very front curve of the tongue you can detect a little bit of that lighter grassiness in there. One of the things you always have to remember with this beer style is that when you add fruit to the beer, the juicy fruity quality just suppresses the green side of the hops, and it takes away a little bit of the IBUs. Now, the Berliner Weiss is not a beer that's high in its IBUs anyway, so that's kind of by the by, but you do feel the juiciness in this beer. For me, the blueberries are coming out around the edge of the tongue, and that's pushing back some of the sort of green citrus, the green grassy citrusy esters of the beer. The raspberries, I think, are coming out more towards the front part of the palate. You can detect some of the slightly sharper raspberry notes just behind the very front curve of your tongue there. And of course, most usually with these beers, the fruit flavours that you get from the hops, they come out in the oily bubble behind the front curve of your tongue. But with this one, if you go behind that front curve of your tongue, it's some of the sharper, more lemony, citricy kind of notes that you pick up on the palate too, which is nice. But yeah, this beer is nice, and I'm finding that the tartness of it even goes down further the more and more that you drink of this beer. But I like how everything is going together in this one. Definitely a more juicy, kind of smooth Berliner Weiss. I certainly wouldn't hesitate to drink this again. This would be a nice kind of summer beer. If you drank this with like a raspberry tart or something like that, if you match this up with a little bit of a kind of fruit pastry or something like that, and cream, then you would really, that would be where you would get the best flavours out of this beer, I think. But I do like how everything goes together in this one. It's not quite as sharp as some of the sour beers that I've had, but it's certainly just a nice blend of flavours. It's doing nothing particularly surprising, but it's a nice kind of easy drinker, and you know, sometimes simplicity is better, as we always say, but I do quite like this one. Is it my favourite sour beer that I've had? Maybe, you know, not quite, but it's nice to have something that gives you a little bit of a change of pace, and it's cool to see both of these breweries starting to be a bit adventurous with some sour beers as well. So in terms of the mouthfeel then, mid-bodied, carbonation's very smooth on this one. The mouthfeel does lean towards the smoother side of things. There's a little touch of IBU in there. So yeah, little touch of IBU. I think you're talking about 20 IBUs at most, if that. A good bit of juicy fruitiness, both from the raspberries and the blueberries. I think the juiciness comes more from the blueberries rather than anything else. You've got a little bit of that sharpness there in the beginning. The impact of this beer, with the puckering notes at the start, isn't too much. But yeah, nice juicy fruity note, little bit of hoppy bitterness, and a nice smooth and slightly sweet malt base as well. So yeah, let's leave it at that for this one. If you get the chance to try this, I highly recommend that you do. Just have a go at it. A nice kind of summer beer, this one, so I think maybe they should consider re-releasing this one. That's one of their summer seasonals or something, but I've enjoyed this one. Two fruits that I quite enjoy actually, and it's been a pleasure to review this, and it's, as I say, it's cool to see both of these breweries having a go at some sour beers. So let's leave it at that for this one. So this is the Brak, a 5% Berliner Weisse from Stigbergets Bryggeri in Gothenburg here in Sweden, and Collective Arts from Hamilton in Ontario over in Canada. So once again, thank you for watching my beer reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comment section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from Collective Arts and from Stigbergets as well, and no doubt you will see some more reviews from both breweries in the fairly near future. But thank you again for watching, and I will catch you guys very soon. The Brak, Berliner Weisse with Raspberry and Blueberries from Stigbergets and Collective Arts. Until the next time, slander just now, and I'll catch you guys later. Skål.